Chapter 7. Kaleigh and Aaron passed an ice cream truck on their way into the fall festival. This morning, Kaleigh had anticipated the sweltering temperatures and wisely dressed in a light pink ribbed tank tucked into high-waisted shorts. The thermometer in her car had not yet hit 90, but the bright sun always did its work in time. Her sneakers kicked up little clouds of dust as they traversed the patchy grass. Erin pulled her hand farther forward as the first few booths came into view. Someone had hand-painted a sign proclaiming Summer Shore's Fall Festival in cherry red script and hung it beside the hosting farm's barn. Next to the sign, the farmers had stacked bales of hay and pumpkins around an antique red tractor. Aaron sprinted up the giant wheels in record time and gave his best cheesy smile so that Kaleigh could snap a pic. After he broke his pose, Aaron looked toward the farm's functioning tractor where some teenagers were patting a trailer with more hay bales and blankets. "Mommy, can you do a hayride later?" he asked. "Sure, but let's find Jackson first." Kayleigh's heart beat a little faster at the sound of his name. She shushed it and told herself that it was irrational that she should be embarrassed of her behavior on Wednesday. Jackson had said he was sorry, and he was the one who had put Aaron at risk. Kayleigh had considered avoiding this trip altogether, but Aaron had been so excited to come to the festival that she couldn't refuse him. Jackson came into view, and this time, Kayleigh's racing heart had nothing to do with anxiety. He was manning the money under the shade of his church's white tent, green eyes concealed behind a pair of aviator shades. Aaron dropped Kayleigh's hand and ran to give Jackson a bear hug around the knees. "Hey, buddy, I'm glad you made it." Jackson shut the cash box labeled donations to return the hug. His basketball jersey was sleeveless, as if you need to show off your muscles anymore. Throwing disdain over discomfort usually worked to cool Kayleigh's blazes of emotion, but this time she wasn't so sure it would. Kayleigh handed Jackson 3 cans out of her backpack, rolling her shoulders after she shed the extra weight. "Thanks, you didn't have to bring anything." Jackson slid the vegetables toward Mariana, who was seated beside him taking inventory. "No problem." At Jackson's other side, Kayleigh noticed Ava working the cotton candy machine. She looked effortlessly adorable as usual in a soft graphic tee with a pumpkin spice latte printed on it. Wisps of sponge sugar rested like a crown on top of her caramel-colored bun. Jackson must have been crazy to give her up for me, Kayleigh thought, but her jealousy was tempered as a stocky guy arrived and planted a kiss on Ava's cheek. The two of them looked smitten. Kayleigh turned to Jackson to gauge his reaction, but he seemed not to even notice. Instead, he started telling Aaron all about the festival's offerings. "And we can get your face painted," he looked to Kayleigh, "if that's okay with your mom." "So you did hear my request to respect my boundaries." She nodded slightly. "We'll see. I'd be happy to take him since I brought the whole subject up," Jackson said. "The stand is right over there." He pointed across the main thoroughfare where an artist was set up in plain sight. Aaron looked at her hopefully. She relented. "All right." Jackson turned to Mariana. "Are you guys good?" "Yeah, go ahead," she smiled. Aaron cheered. "I've never had my face painted before." "Then it's about time you have." Jackson put a hand behind his back and led him over. Kayleigh saw Aaron scan through all the pictures pasted to the artist's easel before settling on a tiger face. His expression of delight as the painter streaked his face with black and orange paint struck Kayleigh with mixed feelings of joy and fear. Her mind told her, he's getting too attached to Jackson, and her heart added in, Aaron isn't the only one. As a child, Lana had exposed Kayleigh to dozens of horrible boyfriends. Kayleigh had determined back then never to do the same to her child. Lana always claimed to be controlling her situation by finding a man to provide for them, but her life's result told a different story. That, along with Kayleigh's own bad relationships, had led her to only one conclusion. Staying away from guys altogether was the safest choice. Yet she knew Aaron wanted to see another guy in his life, even if he wouldn't complain to her about it. She never wanted to deprive Aaron of any friend or experience. But if things go south, Ava's boyfriend interrupted Kayleigh's game of mental ping pong when he extended his hand. Hi, I'm Pete Harrison. Kaleigh Taylor. She accepted the handshake. You're the one who's looking for an elementary school? I am. How did you know? Jackson talked to me about your situation. He rubbed his head self-consciously. Sorry, I thought he would have mentioned it to you by now. Anyway, I work at Citrus Grove Elementary, and I just got the confirmation from my boss yesterday. As long as you fall under our district lines, we'll have a space for your son at our school next year. Kayleigh's mouth went dry. We live in the Bella Vista apartment complex. Oh, yeah, we have a few students from there. Have you seen our campus? She nodded numbly. I thought it was a private school. He produced a packet from the messenger bag at his side. I brought you an application if you're interested. If I'm interested? Grateful tears pricked the back of Kayleigh's eyes. In a daze, she took the application, sat next to Mariana, and wrote her son's name at the top. It seemed like she was endorsing $1 million check in their name instead of filling out a standard kindergarten entry form. Thank you. This means a lot. Don't mention it. I'll be happy to see. Pete glanced at the top of the handout. Aaron around campus next year. A tiny roar interrupted her paperwork, and Aaron stood before her with his fingers formed into claws, as pleased as could be. Kayleigh put a hand to her chest. Don't sneak up on me like that. I thought you were a real tiger. Aaron laughed at the thought that he had scared his mother. Ava presented Aaron with a gigantic bag of grape cotton candy and told Jackson, seriously, we've got too many people here. You guys go enjoy the festival. Kayleigh carefully folded the school application for storage in her backpack. She caught Jackson's eye. Thank you, she said, trying to communicate in those 2 words just how much she meant it. This is everything. Kayleigh didn't want to say more to him now in front of Aaron because this was almost too good to be true, and she was afraid something might fall through with the application. Even if it did, Kayleigh appreciated Jackson's effort. He had listened to her needs and then gone out of his way to try and fulfill them. The more that she thought about it, the more Kayleigh wondered if she'd been wrong about him all along. Even now, she half expected a quick quip, but he only returned her smile and said, You're welcome. Jackson turned to Aaron. So, what do you want to do now? Aaron threw his arms in the air and shouted, The hayride! The hayride it is. They walked past jewelry makers, spice sellers, grill masters, and carpenters before they reached the City of Summer Shores' big blue tent where they sold the hayride tickets. Can I get yours? Jackson asked. Kayleigh shook her head this time and bought the tickets for herself and Aaron. They waited at the end of the line designated for the 11 o'clock departure. When the tractor pulled up, the families in front of them all piled in. By the time Kayleigh, Jackson, and Aaron reached the front, there was only a small space left on the trailer. The woman loading the passengers asked, Can you guys squeeze together, or do you want to wait for the next ride? Aaron had already danced around in line for 20 minutes and would be disappointed if they had come so close only to not get on. Kayleigh glanced at Jackson, who shrugged his shoulders. Sure, she sighed, leading the way up the plywood boards. She sidled in beside a grandma who was sweating it out in a long-sleeved jack-o'-lantern shirt. Jackson guided Aaron up the makeshift ramp next. When he settled his athletic frame down next to hers, their sides connected from shoulder to ankle. Kayleigh swallowed, pretending to be unaffected. She reached out to pull Aaron onto her lap, but Aaron asked, Mommy, is it okay if I sit with Jackson? Okay. She faked a smile. Now that he took you to get face paint, I guess you two are best buds. Aaron nodded and settled into Jackson's lap. The sight they made cut Kayleigh even deeper than her and Jackson's awkward physical contact. As Jackson wrapped his long arms around Aaron protectively, it opened up an aching place in Kaylee that she didn't know was still there. It's nice to have someone else holding Aaron and making him smile, she reflected. For once, Kaylee could breathe. She could lean against the metal railing and enjoy the scenery instead of worrying about Aaron falling through the slats or Aaron not having a good enough time. However, the wave of exhaustion which slapped over her resting limbs terrified her. She always kept moving, if nothing else but to keep her functioning. It was the only way to stay strong, to survive on her own. But today, she wasn't on her own, and she had no idea how to act. Kaylee knew she couldn't keep condemning Jackson for every little thing, pretending as if she wasn't enjoying their time together. He was in their lives for the time being. Still, she didn't want to be caught unawares. Jackson might very well repeat history and find a more interesting girl to chase. Then Kaylee would be Ava, with no Pete waiting for her down the yellow brick road. Aaron would be devastated. Kaylee cursed every rock in the dirt road that sent her flying against Jackson's shoulder, but as usual, he was taking it in good humor, especially when, in an effort to scoot farther away from him, the grandma to her right shot her stern look and snatched her orange plastic purse away. Kaylee's gut reaction was to resist sharing in his laughter and squelch down the feeling of lightness that threatened to bubble up as she watched Aaron point out orange trees and blueberry bushes, but she didn't want to. Aaron's brown eyes sparkled with a carelessness he didn't wear enough. And whether she liked it or not, he was this happy because of Jackson. Jackson pulled Kaylee out of her shell and made her brave enough to come out here today. Jackson took the time to make Aaron adore him, and she was getting tired of pushing people away. Today is a good day, Kaylee reasoned, and I should enjoy good days when they come around. Even after Jackson left, she wanted to hold this memory close. She hoped she could give Aaron 100 more memories like it. Jackson had been on much smoother vehicles than this rickety trailer, which seemed determined to throw them off like a bucking bronco. But the feeling of satisfaction that flooded through him as Aaron rested his head against his chest, and as Kaylee's furrowed brow seemed to relax, was like nothing he'd ever experienced. Kaylee's hair hung loose today like sheets of fire whipping in the wind. She kept fussing at it, trying to smooth it off her face, but the wilder look suited her. And just when he thought that Kaylee couldn't get more beautiful, this was what he had been craving: a true connection, a relationship, a family? Where did that come from, Jackson thought. Family had always been a dirty word to him. But maybe if he could find someone to stick by him, it wouldn't have to be anymore. "What's in that water?" Aaron yelled as they passed a small pond. The center of the water rippled as something dark and bumpy slithered through. "That," their driver hollered over the roar of the tractor, "is an alligator." Their fellow passengers gasped and clamored to get a picture. Aaron also leaned forward, gripping the sides of Jackson's arms. As the water disappeared from their view, corn stalks appeared on the trailer's other side. Jackson craned his neck back to get a better view. The movement brought him even closer to Kaylee, so close he caught a whiff of fresh apples. From her soap, maybe? He shook his head and shifted farther into the iron grate on his left, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. The farmers had built a scarecrow in front of the cornfield with its stuffed arm uplifted to the passengers as they whizzed by. Kaylee leaned over and whispered, "Those girls across from us are totally checking you out." "What?" He whipped his head around. Sure enough, a pair of young women whispered and giggled behind their hands. A few weeks ago, their attention may have stoked Jackson's pride, but now he wished they would quit. "I'm sure you've noticed this happens with pretty much anyone who sees you," Kaylee added. "Not with anyone," Jackson thought. "They're probably talking about whether or not I'm your sister," she said, rubbing her freckled arms. Jackson regarded her then. "Is she seriously jealous?" he thought. Doesn't she know how gorgeous she is? Kaylee would have guys lined up for miles if she stopped giving death glares to anyone who came close enough. But Jackson had stayed close. And now those glares came less and less frequently. He guessed that Aaron could also be a deterrent for guys who were interested in Kaylee. But that's their loss, he thought. Aaron is definitely a plus. Jackson simply replied, "Maybe they are interested in me, but don't worry. They're also not you." He had once again rendered her speechless, but he didn't comment on it. He didn't want to ruin the tranquil ride by prodding Kaylee's temper. Instead, he sighed, completely satisfied as the motion of the trailer whipped up a refreshing breeze. "This was a good idea, buddy," he told Aaron, who beamed. "Yeah, it was. We should hang out again, and not at that stinky hospital." Jackson cocked his head. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to see your house." "Aaron," Kaylee gasped, "you can't just invite yourself over to people's houses." "It's fine," Jackson said. "I'd like to have you guys over." "I'll have to think about it," Kaylee hedged. "Oh," Aaron cried. "Listen to your mom. She has the final say," Jackson told him. He whispered to Kaylee, "I'll text you my address in case you want to come over. On your day off, Monday?" She crossed her arms. "Would you please stop stalking me?" "Hey, the schedules Jenny posts are public information." Kaylee just shook her head at that. The hayride finished its circuit around the property, and everyone stood, brushing pieces of straw from their clothing. "I guess you should get back to your table," Kaylee told Jackson. "The shift I signed up for is over now if you wanted to stay a while before you have to close the store tonight." Kaylee's eyes were daggers. "What? I can't help it if I have a good memory." She looked around. "Well, there does seem to be more to do." Jackson nodded solemnly. "Where to first?" "I'm hungry." Aaron rubbed his belly. His mother rolled her eyes. After all that cotton candy, Aaron's resulting grin was tinted purple. "Yep." They meandered to a barbecue stand where they ordered pulled pork sandwiches, pop, and chips. Aaron left his sandwich untouched, but happily sipped at his orange drink. Jackson polished off Aaron's discarded entree, which was juicy, smoky, and tender. Newly energized, Aaron's next choice was a trip down a massive inflatable slide. "That looks so epic!" he cried, proving with the grown-up word that Kaylee's visits to the library had paid off. "Can we go down the slide, Jackson, please?" Jackson groaned, thinking about how the inflatable's pink vinyl surface would rub the wash off his custom-made jeans. "All right." He climbed up the rope ladder behind Aaron, and they waved to Kaylee at the top. The worker at the slide's base hollered, "He's got to ride down with you," and Jackson nodded. Aaron's little heels kicked Jackson's kneecaps as he squealed in delight all the way down. Kaylee met them at the bottom, applauding vigorously. Jackson pulled Aaron up and clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Great job, buddy. You were so brave." "Again," Aaron pleaded, tugging on the hem of Jackson's jersey. They zoomed down 5 more times until Kaylee put a stop to it. "Come on, take it easy. Jackson will never get his balance back if you guys don't quit." But Jackson hadn't minded. Truth be told, this was shaping up to be the best day he'd ever had. His euphoria made him brave as he walked Kaylee and Aaron back to their car. After Kaylee buckled the drowsy kid in the back seat, Jackson couldn't help but lean close and whisper, "Please come over Monday." Kaylee straightened and looked into his eyes for a long time, her own eyes unusually vulnerable, conflicted. Could she be feeling this magnetism too, he wondered? She let out a breath, and Jackson waited for the rejection. Instead, Kaylee said, "Okay." Kaylee spoke just the one word before she hurried into the driver's seat and drove away. Jackson watched the vehicle pass out of sight before punching his fist in the air. Yes, thank you, God. Maybe after hanging out at church twice a week, his new friend's God speak was rubbing off on him. But Jackson had to celebrate the yes he thought would never happen. He would show Kaylee that her trust in him was not a mistake. He texted D'Angelo that he was ready to go. He sent a second text to Isaac. Solomon knows what he's talking about.